Hey, what do dancing goats, running water, and high mountains all have in common? All that and more next on First Century Foundations. On today's episode, we're going to be visiting the region of Banias, or what is called in the scripture Caesarea Philippi. But let me talk to you a little bit more about Isaac Karasenti, who is our guide and is helping us with some of these episodes, particularly in the region of Galilee. Isaac is a great guy, and what I remember about him when I first met him on one of our tours is the fact that he was always happy, he's charming, he's got some great wit and that amazing accent. And most of all, he is as knowledgeable as any of the guides that I've met here in the land of Israel. We're going to be visiting this area of Caesarea Philippi, and if we go back to the scriptural text, we understand that in Matthew chapter 16, something very, very incredible, very foundational happened there in that part of the text. And I want to just read you one verse to sort of set this up today, and then we're going to talk just a little bit more about that. When Jesus came into the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" It's a simple question that Jesus asks. Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And the answer to that question really has so many implications to the spread of God's kingdom and originally the birth of the church. But we're going to visit today this region where Jesus brought his disciples to pose this question. And what we're going to learn is that it's not just any area. It is really one of the centers of pagan religion at that time. And that poses some significant thoughts for us as we think about Jesus and his question to the disciples and, how they would respond. And so we are excited to be able to invite you to walk with us in this place, to be able to learn more about some of the traditions surrounding this place, and also the impact of the disciples' response as they answer Jesus' all-important question, who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? We're going to be exploring that right after this with our good friend Isaac. Don't go away.
Coming up, Jeff joins tour guide Isaac Karasenti at the gates of Hades. Exciting things are happening in the land of Israel. Because of the prayers and financial gifts of people like you, First Century Foundations has been able to support a number of ministries throughout the Holy Land, feeding the poor, looking after the sick, and bringing hope to those in need is the everyday reality for these believers in Israel. And this would be an impossible task without your support. This practical approach of feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, and visiting the sick is making a real difference in many lives throughout the land and is changing hearts. Yet while we are seeing many amazing miracles and successes, the needs are always increasing. Call or write today and become a monthly partner for just $30 a month or more. And when you call, be sure to ask for the free Israel Prayer Watch, so you will be up to date on all that is happening with the ministries that you are supporting. Call today. We're waiting to hear from you.
Hey everybody, welcome back. And today I'm again with my friend Isaac, and we are up in the north of Israel, a place called the Golan. You're going to tell us a little bit more about this incredible place that we're visiting today. And this place plays a fairly pivotal part in the history of the church, the Christian church at least. So tell us a little bit about where we're at.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, welcome to Caesarea Philippi, which is also known as Banias or Banias. Soon I'm going to explain about the meaning of these names, but very important thing, here in this place, Jesus asked his disciples, who do the people say that I am? And here, for the very first time in the history, the disciples confirmed him that he was the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of the living God. And here, for the very first time, the primacy was given to Simon Peter.
Well, this is a very fascinating place, and I love to come here, bring our groups here, but we're going to show all of you at home what's happening here at Banias or Banias. And so, Isaac, you're going to lead the way, and let's go see what we've come to see today.
My pleasure. Please follow us.
Now, Isaac, we were talking just back over here about how significant this location is because of Jesus and the story of Jesus and the disciples, but this really was a significant location long before that.
Absolutely, yes.
Tell me why.
Because of the water.
Ah.
Over here, we can see these two beautiful pools full of water.
Yes.
Now, above the pools, over here, you can see this big cliff. This is the foot of Mount Hermon. So
Okay.
from topographic point of view, right now we are by the foot of Mount Hermon, which is the highest mountain in Israel. Top of the mountain is a little bit more than 7,000 feet high.
Right.
Which means that every year in the winter, top of the mountain is covered with lots of heavy snow.
No.
During springtime, the snow melts. It turns into water. And then the water carves their way from the top of the mountain all the way down to the bottom. By the way, the bedrock of Mount Hermon is all limestone.
Ah, okay.
So the water carved their way from the top of the mountain through the layers of the limestone down to the foot, and here eventually the water find their way to come out back on the surface thanks to 72 springs that we have in these two pools.
Okay.
So this water that we see here comes from 72 springs.
So then why is it a place where religious ideology wanted to be associated with? What's the significance between the water and the place?
The history of this place takes us back in time to the year 198 BC, Hellenistic era. At that time we learn about a group of Greek shepherds that came and settled down here. They settled down here, obviously, because they needed the water for their sheep and goats.
Right.
So they had plenty of water, plenty of food. They had a lot of shade here. This is why they settled down here. They established a small town and decided to name the town after their god. In the Greek mythology, we find information about the Greek god of the shepherd called Pan. How do we spell it in English? P-A-N.
Okay.
And according to the Greek mythology, it says that the god Pan, upper part of the body was a man, lower part of the body was a goat, and he was a very naughty god, because it says that late at night he used to go into the cities, towns and villages, and he used to scare people to death. Because of him, people panicked. So when these pagan Greek shepherds settled down here and established their town, they named the town after their god Pan.
Very good. So now we're going to go and we're going to visit the place where the Acropolis was, and you can tell us a little bit more about what they would do there, and
Absolutely.
and also some other religions that sort of came and adopted this place. Right?
Absolutely, yes.
Great. All right, let's go.
Let's go. Please follow me.
Well, Isaac, I've been here before, but every single time I come, I'm always amazed at the massive rock face, the structure, the story behind it. And so you're going to talk to us a little bit about what the cave here is all about, what happened here. Tell us
Absolutely.
about the god of Pan.
Now, in ancient times, this cave was full of water.
Okay.
Now, the Greeks didn't know how deep was the water, so they were afraid of this cave. And according to the Greeks and later on the Romans, they believed that this cave that we see here, this was the one and only house of the god Pan. Now, as we said, the town was named after the god who lived in this cave, Pan,
Yes.
Banias.
Right.
Now, every year, over here, they conducted special celebrations for the god Pan. So during that day of the holiday, early in the morning, many pilgrims used to gather inside the city. Down there, history tells us there was a big goat market. Every pilgrim had to buy a goat. Then the pilgrims had to come with their goats all the way here. Here was the place where they had to slaughter the goat, and then they had to throw the goat into the water.
So they slaughtered the goats here.
A lot of blood.
A lot of blood.
Lots of noise.
And this was full of water, and they would throw the goat into the water.
Absolutely, yes. Now,
then what?
Then what? Two things could happen. Good scenario would be that the dead goat would sink all the way down to the bottom. That meant to say Pan accepted your offerings.
Okay.
Bad scenario would be that the dead goat could float on top of the water. That was a bad sign, meant to say sorry, but Pan rejected your offerings, try one more time. Then you had to go back to that market. You had to get yourself another new goat.
Oh my goodness.
For the second time, you had to come here.
Yeah.
You had to slaughter the goat. You had to throw the goat into the water. This time, you have to pray hard because it must sink all the way down to the bottom.
You only get 2 chances.
No, it's endless.
You might have to go back again.
Even third and fourth and fifth time because the dead goat must sink down to the bottom.
I don't know what to say. That would really get your goat, wouldn't it? I mean, it would get... oh, sorry, that's bad.
Now listen to the punchline.
Okay.
Because of the dead goats here,
Yeah.
the water became to be red.
Yes.
So at that time, the Greeks considered this place as the gates of Hades.
Uh-huh.
So when Jesus said to Peter, I tell you the truth, that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. That's the gates of Hades. Remember, always Jesus talked about things that he saw.
That's right. That's right. So there it is, folks. If you always wondered what Jesus meant when he said to Peter, the gates of hell will not prevail against it, or the gates of Hades, this is actually the place, the physical illustration that he was using to explain to Peter what was going to happen as Peter began to be the father, I guess, of the early church. And you see it when you come here. Amazing.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Now, let's continue further uphill to the Acropolis and see the remains of the pagan temples.
All right, let's do it.
Up next, Jeff and tour guide Isaac continue to explore the ruins of Caesarea Philippi. Jerusalem, the holy city, is the focus of much of the world's attention. And Psalm 122 tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Yet do we really know why, or even how? Why does God want us to specifically pray for the peace of this ancient city? And how do you pray for a city that for most of us seems so foreign and so far away? Praying for the Peace of Jerusalem, the new book by Jeff Feuders, now reveals God's purpose for the holy city and all of Israel, and why he wants every believer to pray for his holy land. Now more than ever, the people of Israel need our prayers and support. And when you order your copy of the book Praying for the Peace of Jerusalem with a gift of just $10 or more plus shipping and handling, you are also helping these precious people in a very real way. Call the number on your screen now or go online to firstcenturyfoundations.com and order Praying for the Peace of Jerusalem and begin to pray for Israel with understanding and purpose.
So down below, we saw where the sacrifices were taking place, the offerings.
Yes.
And now up top here, what is it that we're going to see?
The Acropolis. Remember that during Hellenistic, later on during Roman era, above each and every city, the Greeks and later on the Romans, they built the Acropolis. Now, what is the Acropolis?
On a high place. Okay.
Acropolis, exactly. This is a combination of two words. The first word is Acra or Acro, which in translation to English means the highest point of or the end of. Okay. Second word is a police, which means a city. Acropolis, the highest point of the city. Now, in the Acropolis, always the Greeks and the Romans built their temples. Over here, we can see the remains of the big temple that was built for the god Pan. Now, people can come to us and ask, how do you know that we are talking about the temple of Pan?
Isaac, how do you know that you are talking about the temple of Pan?
Because it says so. Now, if you please take a look up there,
a sign.
you see, between the big niche to the smaller one, you see some letters in Greek engraved into the cliff. They tell us the whole story. How here the Greeks built a big temple and dedicated the temple to the god Pan. But let me tell you something else. Even without these inscriptions, we could tell that we are talking about the temple of Pan.
Okay.
We talked about the importance of archaeology.
Yes.
During the time of the excavations in the big niche, archaeologists discovered a big statue of Pan, upper part of the body a man, lower part of the body a goat, and in the upper one they discovered another smaller statue of Pan. So even without these inscriptions, we could come to this conclusion that we are talking about his temple.
Amazing. That's
Now,
awesome.
further to the right, you see there is another niche in the middle.
Yes.
Over there, archaeologists discovered the statue of Hermes. According to the Greek mythology, he was one of the sons of Zeus. Zeus was the father of all the gods. He used to make deliveries for his father. And in the niche further to the right, archaeologists discovered the statue of one of the nymphs called Echo. According to the Greek mythology, it said that Echo lived only in the caves. Therefore, since then until today, every time when you go into the caves, you hear the echo.
Very good.
There you go. Now I know that
Awesome.
I sound like the father from the film My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
So, there you go.
So there you go.
I don't know if I
all
did that right.
connected to Greek.
We're having a little too much fun. Thanks, Isaac. That's amazing. So without the sign, we still would know that this is the Acropolis to the Greek god Pan.
Absolutely, yes.
Love archaeology. All right, let's see what else we have to see.
Let's continue.
Now we're coming up to another ruin here, and we've already passed one here as well. Tell us a little bit about what we're seeing and why is this significant to our story?
My pleasure. Now, over here, we see two other temples. Number one is the temple that we see down below us, called the Temple of Pan and the Dancing Goats. Soon I'm going to explain.
Okay.
And over there, other side of the street, we can see the remains of another temple called the Temple of the Sacred Goats. Now, let's focus in Pan and the Dancing Goats. What do we see here? Over here, you can see a small niche. Over there, back then, the pagans used to put a big statue of the god Pan.
Okay.
Now, behind it, there was a secret room for the orchestra. They used to sit here and to play loud music. Now, further to the right, you can see the beginning of the white pavement.
Yes.
Over here, there were three dancing goats. You know that you can train an animal to dance according to a certain music. So every year, over here, they had a special holiday for Pan. So from early morning hours of that day, orchestra came here, played loud music, and the three goats were dancing here from morning till evening. Now, you remember that we said that early in the morning, pilgrims had to gather in the center of the town, in that goat market.
Right.
Everybody had to buy a goat. Then first of all, they had to come into this temple with the goats. When they came here, they saw three dancing goats.
Right.
Behind them, the statue of Pan, and they heard a very loud music. And then history tells us that every pilgrim had literally to dance with his goat. Then end of the dance, they had to go to that cave, gates of Hades. Over there, they slaughtered the goats and threw them into the water. End of the day, they had to clean that cave. So they used to bring out the dead goats, and they used to bury the dead goats inside that temple. This is why the name that was given to that temple was the Temple of the Sacred Goats. But Jeff, bottom line, what do we see here?
Can I ask a question before you get to the bottom line?
Please, my friend.
So there's a couple things. First of all, they make the goats dance here, and then they take them over there and
slaughter them.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't have danced if they would know that that's where they were headed, would they?
No.
No, probably
no,
not.
the goats, no.
My other question is this. You said that they would clean out the cave at the end of the day, bury the goats over here. Did they count the goats to make sure that only the goats that Pan didn't receive came out?
No.
Because they all came out.
All came out. Eventually, yes. Because even the goats that
Very
floated,
interesting.
after a while, sank.
Ah, okay.
Now, you know, what makes the goat to float or not to float depends if there is water in the lungs, yes or no.
Yes.
If when you slaughtered, you cut the lungs, so when you threw the goat into the water, lungs got filled with water, it sank.
Right.
Otherwise, no, but it will take some time. After a few hours, eventually, the goat will sink down to the bottom.
That makes sense to me. So get to the bottom line. You said the bottom line of all of this is what?
What do we see here?
Yeah.
Paganism.
Yes.
And now we understand why in the Bible it says that when Jesus came to where? To the region of Caesarea Philippi.
Yes.
It doesn't say into the city of Caesarea Philippi. And now we see and understand why.
Okay.
Because this was a pagan city. You see what was going on here. Now we understand why on purpose he didn't want to bring his disciples into the city. So he brought them to the region of Caesarea Philippi. And of course that we can assume that from the region they could see the Acropolis, they could see the temples, and they could see what was going on here.
Okay, okay. There's some great significance, isn't there, as to why Jesus would come to this particular location, to a center of all kinds of other religious ideology, pagan idolatry, and make this powerful statement that he was about to make to Peter about the future of this band of disciples and the church that would grow from them. I think that the significance of that is incredible. And again, you know, I have read this text hundreds of times in my life, but it wasn't until I came here that it all sort of, you know, fell into place. You can read about it, you can Google it, you can look into commentaries and find some of this stuff. But coming here and seeing the locations, standing and being able to visualize exactly what is happening in this place helps us to know that when Jesus brought his disciples here, he was using, again, this amazing visual illustration. You're Peter, and on this rock, I mean, we're standing in front of one of the largest rocks that, you know, that I've ever seen. On you, Peter, this rock, I'm going to build my church. And the gates of Hades, right here in front of us, will not prevail against it. I think it's powerful. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that at the close of the show today. But thanks so much for bringing us here and for showing all of this.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
And again, as you said, only when people come here and walk here, this is the best way to understand everything much better.
Yeah, amen. Amen.
First Century Foundations has been making a difference in the lives of some of Israel's most needy for years. And you have been a vital part of this important work. Because of your gifts, we have been able to support the believers in the Holy Land, who every day are sharing the love of God with the elderly, Holocaust survivors, refugees, underprivileged children, and everyone in need from all backgrounds and walks of life. This practical approach of feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, and visiting the sick is making a real difference in many lives throughout the land of Israel and is changing hearts. But your prayers and support are critical in this work, and without people like you, this won't continue. Call or write today and ask for the free Israel Prayer Watch and learn how to pray and how your gifts will make a difference. We're waiting to hear from you.
Wow, what an amazing visit. I never get tired of coming to Caesarea Philippi and understanding in a new and a fresh way how all of, you know, what we learned together on the show impacts a lot of how the church began. And I want to go back to the text that we read earlier in the show when we introduced this episode. And I want to talk a little bit more about the response of the disciples as Jesus posed that all-important question. Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And so if we go back to Matthew chapter 16, we're going to pick up in the very next verse, and let's read it together. So they said, Some say John the Baptist, some Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter answered and said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered and said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. And I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." And then he commanded his disciples that they should tell no one that he was Jesus, the Christ. Now, if we look at church tradition, many would say that what Jesus was claiming there was that Peter, the person, would be the foundation of the church. He would be the one who the church was built upon. Certainly we know that, from the Catholic tradition, that is kind of how church history rose up. But I want to just pose another thought to you today, because I really believe that the power is in the words that Peter said and not who Peter was. Peter was that interesting character who was always compulsive, who was always, sort of putting his foot in his mouth. Today, though, he makes this amazing statement: "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And I like to think that it wasn't about Peter the person, even though Jesus referred to him as Peter, as the rock, and that he would build his church. But I believe that he was going to build his church not on Peter as an individual, because I believe that when we look at individual personalities and we look to man, we're always disappointed. He was going to build his church on this incredible confession of faith that Peter had made on this day. Jesus, you are the Christ. You are the Son of the living God. And folks, that's the confession that each one of us has to make in order to be a part of God's family, a part of God's kingdom, a part of his universal church. And so we look at all that we've seen today. We understand that the gates of Hades, this place where all of these sacrifices were made to the god of Pan, Jesus was saying that idolatry and pagan religion will not stand against this incredible confession of faith that Peter was making on that day. And so today, I want you to know something. I want you to know that the church is not built on any one person. The church is the body of Jesus, the body of Christ, the body of Messiah. And it's built not on a person, but on a confession of faith, that if you believe that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God, then you can be a part of his church, a part of his body, a part of the kingdom of God. It's been an incredible time as we've shared together today. We want to thank you for being with us on the show. God bless you. We'll see you next time on First Century Foundations.
Thank you for watching. To learn more about this program and the ministries in Israel that we help, or to receive the Israel Prayer Watch, call the number on the screen or visit us online at firstcenturyfoundations.com. And to keep up to date on all that we're doing, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Join Jeff Feuders again in Israel next week on First Century Foundations.